This is just a true life story about a gun, this gun, that actually saved my life a couple of decades ago in the early 80s. And a little background, I've been involved in a lot of businesses, a couple of dozen businesses over the last 30 years, and they range from luncheonettes to restaurants to bars, nightclubs, even a couple of gentlemen's clubs in there. And those type of businesses, they were really never in the best neighborhood, to be honest with you. They were always in not the greatest neighborhoods, but they made a lot of money, and I was able to support my family, and that's what I had to do. But a long story short, if you could try to guess what type of gun this is, you'll never guess, by the way, but I'm just showing you the outline of it for right now. But this particular gun saved my life one day. What happened was I had a business where I had 2 lottery machines, and at the time we were the 3rd busiest lottery seller in the tri-state area. There was the Twin Towers or World Trade Center, there was another place, and then there was me. So when I say we were busy, we had 2 lottery machines with 2 people on them from opening to closing, and my employees, their only job was to feed lottery tickets into the machines. I had a lot of high roller customers, let's say, that used to leave stacks of tickets of $2,000–3,000 at a time, and I would run them twice a week for those customers, and they would pay me for it. So we took in a fair amount of money, many tens of thousands of dollars a week. And I didn't make that much. You made 6 cents on a dollar back then, but it was still, good because it was in the front of a restaurant and it brought other people into the restaurant. That's a long story short. But anyway, one night I was sitting there and it was about dusk, and I was sitting behind the cash register, which was my, spot. I had a pretty high stool, and I like to handle the money back in the day. So when I did that one night, this guy came in, and he was a nervous looking guy, and I used to be pretty generous to people. People knew that if they ever needed a meal or even a pack of cigarettes, they could come and they could ask me, and I would give it to them. That was just my nature. And this guy came in, and he sort of was looking down, and to myself I said, this guy's gonna ask for a free sandwich, a free cup of coffee, maybe a pack of cigarettes, something like that. And I was prepared to say yes for the guy. And I'm like, what's up, buddy? And he sort of stumbled a little bit. He's like, humming and hawing. Next thing, the guy pulled out a revolver and stuck it in my face and asked me for all my money. Now, mind you, there was about a dozen customers, sitting there at that particular time. It was right before the dinner crowd, so it wasn't really busy. And about half a dozen of those were some of my regulars and a couple of good friends. And this guy stuck a gun in my face and said, give me the money. So I don't know why. I should have been more scared than I actually was, probably just because I was a young buck back then. I used some choice words, and I said, basically get the blank out of here. And he put the gun a little closer, I would say about 6 inches in front of my nose. And at that point, I don't know what happened, but I do remember that I grabbed the guy's arm and I squeezed onto his arm, and at that point I pulled this gun from under the counter where I used to have it hanging on a nail. So I guess not the safest thing to do. I didn't know all the safety rules back then, but this is a black powder 44 caliber gun, and I guess it was safe to do because the hammer wasn't cocked, but I wouldn't do it today. But I had this hanging on a nail, and as I grabbed the guy's arm, I took it and I grabbed it and I proceeded to stick this back into his face, and I cocked the hammer and I said, drop your gun, which he did. And at that point I decocked the gun, and myself and a couple of friends escorted the gentleman out of our business, and we had a nice chat with him. That's all I'm going to say about that. And we, it made sure that he wouldn't really be doing that to any other people. So what's the point of this video? The point of the video is this is probably one of my most precious guns because it literally saved my life. Because when I stuck this back at the guy, I guess he just didn't expect it because I was sitting there on a stool, and you know, he looked like he almost had a heart attack, and you know, changed many different colors, his face. And so the point is, any gun is better than no gun. A lot of people here on YouTube, they're like, oh, you got to have a 40, you got to have a 10 millimeter, you got to have a 44 Magnum. And, you know, they put down 9 millimeters, 380s, and all kinds of 22s, whatever. But, you know, my point is, any gun that's pointed in your face is going to scare the crap out of you. And luckily, my instincts took over, and I was able to grab his gun. And probably his instincts were a little slow. So I'm not saying I'm Steven Seagal or anything like that, but I guess, you know, we did find out he was a heroin addict. And I guess if you're a heroin addict, you're probably not on your game. And, you know, I was in my early 20s, and I was on my game. I used to do martial arts, boxing, all kinds of stuff like that. So I was pretty fit. And you know, that's it. But like I said, this is a gun. It's a black powder gun. Would I choose it now for my self-defense gun? Nope. You know, I keep it locked up with some old antiques that I find, you know, to be treasures. But you don't need, you know, you don't need the latest gun. Although a lot of us have the gun addiction and we seem to buy it. But any gun is better than no gun. That's the bottom line of this. And the other part of the story is, you know, it did turn out that this guy had robbed a few other places. And so by having a nice chat with them about, you know, the virtues of being a good person and not doing that, I believe that I may have saved someone else's life in the process because, you know, I didn't hear about any more robberies after that. So that's it. So this is just, you know, 44 caliber. They call it an Army. I guess it's a replica of the Colt single action. And it's a black powder gun. They called it a Navy, I'm sorry, not an Army. And it was the gun that I had at the time. In New York, as it is now, it's virtually impossible to get a pistol permit. And even though I went all through the channels, I even paid a couple of $1,000s, I remember back then, to an attorney to try to get me a pistol permit. After having to travel 3 times to one police plaza and filling out forms and applications and having it reviewed and this and that, I finally gave up. It was just costing me too much money and too much time away from my businesses to, you know, pursue it. So that's why I went and got this black powder, which was totally legal at the time. You could just buy it in, you know, in any gun store, and that's it. It again, not the best self-defense gun, but I can tell you from shooting this, it's got a hell of a kick, and you know, it's certainly. As Dirty Harry would say, it would take your head clean off, that's for sure. I don't know about that, but it's a very powerful gun. But luckily, I never had to use it, and I never had to fire it. And that's it. So just a quick story. I have a couple of friends that know me well, and they know I have a YouTube channel, and they're constantly saying, why don't you tell all the stories about what happened? And I don't really want to do that. I like to keep my life private, but I figured maybe this could help someone, like I said, because you know, there are people out there, I see channels and the guy has a Phoenix Arms 22 or, you know, an inexpensive gun, $100, $200 gun, and people give him a lot of BS about it. And, you know, as long as the gun works, I think you're okay. Because, you know, I've said it many times, any gun is better than no gun. So that's just a quick story about something that happened to me many years ago, and I'm here to live to tell a story about it. So, all right, hope you like it, and don't forget to subscribe and like. Have a great day. Bye.